Okay, so this is the Indus Valley or Harappan Civilization lecture. Keep in mind that it's the same exact thing. Sometimes the books refer to it as Indus Valley, other times they refer to it as Harappan Civilization after one of the major cities. But we're still talking about the same thing. Okay, so we're talking about a civilization that emerged in the Indus River Valley, and it was one of the civilizations that was discovered last. And some of the areas are still being excavated, and we have not been able to translate their writing. So there's a lot of mystery surrounding this civilization. We don't know much about it. Um, okay, so some of the things to know about the civilization is that we're talking about multiple cities um, along the Indus River Valley, and this would be in today's Pakistan. Um, we are kind of guesstimating that this civilization took place between 2500 BCE and 2000 BCE. And keep in mind, this is about 1,000 years after the beginning of Egyptian civilization. Okay, so yes, it does coincide with portions of Egyptian civilization, but Egypt is Egypt exists for a much longer period of time. Um, okay, so these are some of the cities that have been excavated. We have Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, and there are other sites. And they have excavated these seals, which haven't been deciphered yet. And a lot of what we know about the civilization is based on the archaeology. So it's not really based on any of their writings because we don't yet know exactly how to interpret them. One of the things that is significant about the civilization is that they did not build palaces or royal tombs or monumental structures. So there's no pyramids, no ziggurats here. And if you look at the picture, you see that what remains of the foundations of some of these buildings seems to suggest that they were not boastful of social class. There are differences in sizes of structures, and that is how we can guess that they did have some sort of social class hierarchy, but it doesn't really suggest much of a difference here between the super rich elite and the poor. They also had a giant bathtub, giant bath, which we're not exactly sure what it did. It might have had some ritual purposes. Um, there's just some interesting things in the city that are very different than Egypt and Mesopotamia. Okay, so we do know that they had a surplus of food, just like all other civilizations, and it was relatively easy to farm in this region. Um, these cities, even though they are separated by miles, they look pretty much the same. They have a general pattern. They also have fortified structures or citadels that may have been for protection. And we talked about warfare as being one of the drivers of civilization here, so it's possible that that was the case. Um, they had indoor plumbing, and kind of a bit ahead of its time at this point. Um, Moving on, here we have a map that kind of shows us where the Indus River Valley civilizations occurred, and it also shows some of the connecting trade routes to this area. So here are some examples of jewelry that were finished, and it does suggest that there is some long distance trade here in order to acquire some of the precious materials needed to create some of this jewelry. Metals such as copper and silver were mined, and they use script and weights and measures in trade. But again, since we don't know about their language, it's a little bit hard to tell what exactly they were doing. Okay, so what we do know is that Harappan civilization collapsed, and around 1000 BCE, we have what they call the Indo-European invasions. And you see the purple in this map suggests that this is the homeland of the Indo-European people. Indo-European became the mother tongue for most of the Western languages Iranian languages and Sanskrit, which was the ancient Indian language. So they believe that the Indo-Europeans may have been the ancestors of the Greeks, the Hittites, the Iranians, and the Aryans that invaded the subcontinent, pushing out the Dravidians, which would have been the original peoples that had lived in the Indus Valley. Okay, so Aryan migrations began about 1500 BCE. They crossed the mountains. The Hindu Kush is the mountain range, and they call themselves Aryans or respected ones. They had domesticated horses, and we do think that horses came from Central Asia. It's possible that it was the Indo-Europeans who domesticated horses for the first time, and they brought a chariot. So they were very capable and able to defeat the indigenous people of the Indus River Valley. They migrated from the Indus River Valley to the Ganges River Valley and then down to the Deccan Plateau. And southern India still retained a Dravidian population. They brought technology, so the iron plow, and they mastered the use of iron, which also gave them an edge. And the Aryans essentially supplanted and potentially married with the existing population, and Harappan civilization essentially collapses. We are. This shows us the arrival of the Aryans, and then in green you see the second area of settlement. Okay, region became unified because of the shared culture of the Vedas. One of the things that the Aryans did is that they brought their epic poems and beliefs to the Indian subcontinent. And the Vedas became the foundation for what later became Hinduism. In Aryan society, clans were important. They were regional oligarchies and chieftains, and they traced their heritage down to two lineages. Clans sometimes fought amongst themselves, even though they shared a culture. So it does not share necessarily a political organization that unifies all the Aryans, but they are culturally united. Their epic tales, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, became the foundation for their beliefs. And this period of time from about 1500 BCE till about 300 BCE sometimes is called the Epic period or the Brahmanic period, in which this became the foundation for their society. So what we have is powerful monarchies emerging around kings. Kings in India are called rajas. And some of these epic poetry that are written in Sanskrit are regulating their behavior. So the laws of Manu are an example of another epic. And the other thing that helps kings rule is a very strict caste system. And the caste system placed the priests or the Brahmin class at the top because they had access to reading the Mahabharata and other epic poems. And then from there, they reinforced a very strict system going down to the bottom caste, which potentially were made up of the conquered peoples. So the caste system offered a way to establish order in the society and incorporate the people that they had defeated. Okay, so there was exchange between the indigenous people and the Aryan invaders, but we don't really know much about the indigenous people. Most of what happened in India after this point is developed from the Aryans. Okay, the Vedas also included other hymns and rhymes and texts that were considered sacred, and they were passed down in oral tradition and then eventually written into Sanskrit, like I said before. So we already talked about the Brahmins and the caste system. You should know the order of the castes here. And the Brahmins at the very top, followed by the Kshatriyas, who are the warriors, And then underneath them, they have the Vaishyas, who work the land and tended the livestock. And at the very bottom, you have the Shudras. And these are the people that are not Aryan, that cannot trace their lineage to the Vedic people. Eventually, this caste system becomes way more complicated, and they add a lot of different subcastes to these. But these main four ones, you should know their names. And eventually, by about 500 BCE, some of these beliefs begin to be combined in a new religious text called the Upanishads. And we will spend a little bit more time later on talking about what Hindu beliefs are and how they differ from area to area and over time.